Welcome back to the channel. In today's video we are installing or finishing up the CSL conversion and installing the CSL door cards. I partnered up with Karbonius, and since I love their product I was very happy to be able to do so. So with that being said, I will take you guys on a step-by-step guide on how to install these door cards if you're planning on doing so, and then also show you the issues I ran into while trying to install these door cards, since there are a few things you have to be aware of before starting this. Otherwise it'll delay the project by a little bit like it did for me, but that's why you guys got me, and I'll show you guys the issues so you don't have to deal with them. So I think that's enough talking. Let's jump into the install. Alright, so I took off the door card on the driver's side already, and there are 5 screws you have to take off. There's one behind the airbag logo right here. You take the cap off, and there's a screw right there. Then you have one right here, one right there, and one right here. Once you have those off, there's one behind a cap right here in the door, and you can just unpop it from the clips and take the door card off. Another thing we have to do to prep this door for the new door card is get rid of the side door airbag. And the reason we're doing that is in case of a crash, we don't want projectile carbon fiber being shot at our bodies and cutting us or hurting us. So we're gonna remove that just in case. But yeah, it also makes the car lighter, so there is that. But it's a pretty easy thing to do. We have 3 bolts, 1, 2, and 3. We're gonna take those off. Also make sure that your car battery is disconnected. Mine's been disconnected overnight, so there should be no charge anywhere in the car. And once we do that, we can take the 3 bolts off, and then behind it there's a connector that we have to just unpin or unplug and then pull off the airbag, and the airbag is off. So we're gonna do that right now, and then we'll get back to rerouting the connector to the center console. There we go. So now we have disconnected the airbag. Make sure if you're gonna keep this off the car, or if you're swapping it, make sure to keep this in a safe location so it doesn't get triggered, since there is an explosive charge right here. I've spent a couple of minutes hunting down the cable for the mirror switch, and what I found out, it's not as simple as I thought it would be. So in this door, the cables go from the car into the door, and then they run out this way. What I found out, because I took apart the connector which connects the doors, is that the mirror cable doesn't go straight from the car this way in, which makes it a little bit more complicated. The cables from the car feed into this module, and then from there it feeds out into the connector. So what I'm gonna do is I depinned it right now so I could go and find the correct cable to basically extend this. So what we're gonna do, because I don't know exactly how this works, and I was looking online and it doesn't really specify how this works, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna repin this connector right here. Oh wait, this connector right here, we're gonna repin it, and then we're gonna use the new cable I got to extend the cable back into the cabin and into the center console. So that's the plan for now. I'll let you guys know exactly how I do it, because I haven't done this at all, or I haven't seen anybody that's done anything like this at all. So I'm gonna figure out how it's done, and then I'll share with you guys how I did it. I've figured out how to feed the cable into the cabin, and what I did is, so this connector you take off on the door. This is attached like this, and you take that off with an 8mm screw. So this right here, it's a hex bolt that you pull out, and once you pull that out, you can take this cover off. I did also disconnect this. I took off the protector, and then I also took out the molding on the door, as you can see right here. And what I did, it made it a lot easier to feed my cable, the new cable that I want, through it. And once I fed it through it, now I'm gonna feed that cable in through here. I'm gonna grab it right here, pull it out, and then I'm gonna splice my original cable in half, connect it to my new cable, replug it in right here, and then we're gonna work our way into the car to feed this gray cable into the center console. Once we have that, we can start disassembling the center console, and we figured out how to route all the cables back to the center console. So I'm gonna do a quick splice and solder job on half of the cable once I feed it in, and then we can continue. I finished splicing and resoldering my cables to extend it. I'm using a 22 gauge 4 wire cable. So it has 4 22 gauge wires inside, and that's what we're using to extend these 22 gauge wires. But make sure that you color code them correctly so everything works properly once you install it. So now we're gonna reassemble this right here, pull the wire through into the cabin, reassemble the door or the molding on the door and on the car. Once we have that, we can continue to feed the wire in to the cabin right here and get a look as to what we have to do to get it in. Once I have everything wired in, I'm gonna connect the connector to the wire I created before I start putting everything back together, just to make sure that everything works and that we didn't mess up the wiring in some way. And then once we double check that, we'll start installing the carbon fiber pieces and making everything look good. So I'm gonna start feeding, or I'm gonna see how or what we have to take apart in the cabin to get the wire in, and then I'll give you guys an update. Alright, so like I was saying, I fed the cable through this protective rubber, and we're feeding it into the chassis now via this hole right here. Once we did that, I had to take off the protective plastic that goes right here underneath the footwell, or in the footwell, to get access to the cable. So the next steps are pretty simple. So since I've already got it into the cabin, all I'm gonna do is run the cable across here and underneath this cover, and then it's gonna be at the center console. So we're pretty much there. So I'm gonna start finishing the solder job on this side. I'm also gonna reassemble this cable right here so it looks like nobody ever touched anything, and then we can jump to the interior and start disassembling the center console to put in the carbon fiber piece. Here we have the inside of the door, and we have to drill out 4 holes on the actual door itself. So what you have to do is take this cover off, and it's going to be approximately in this location. We're going to be using the template to locate the actual location for the holes, and once we drill it, we're going to do something like that. So we're going to have 2 holes like this, so we can fit the bolts that I bought through and mount the brackets. The next one will be up here. Same thing, we're just going to pull this cover off nice and gently so we can get access to the metal in the back, and then we'll do the cutting or the drilling there as well. What I'm going to do as well is cut in little slots. I think it's like somewhere around here and right here behind this thing, so that way the bracket comes out and this can go over it and it looks nice and OEM as well, even behind the door cards, so it won't look too out of place. Alright, with that being said, let's start installing the template onto the doors so we can see where we have to drill, and then we'll work from there. Okay, so now I've located both of the brackets on the door. What I ended up doing was putting the door cards on and double checking the locations of these holes. We're going to be putting in the bolts for the door handles, and they line up pretty nicely. I wasn't able to use these templates quite honestly because the dimension was so off that it was a lot harder to locate the location of the brackets, but by using the template as approximation and then putting the door cards on top and double checking the these holes right here for the door handle, I was able to get it pretty close to where it should be. So now we're gonna do the drilling, and hopefully everything is lined up nicely so we don't have to do any corrections. But if we do, we can create slots, and then we can move this around left and right with the bolts that I got. So hopefully we don't have to do that, but let's give it a shot now. I don't know how that shot of me drilling turned out, but what we're gonna do now is we're gonna put the bolts in for the brackets and see how it lines up with the holes. Hopefully my calculations were correct. To mount these brackets onto the door, I got socket cap screws. They're M5 screws. I also got a set of washers and nuts to mount it, so it should look pretty nice. You could also do sheet metal screws or self-tapping screws, but I think this will look a little bit nicer. And in my head, I was thinking if we do make a mistake and we need to correct it, we can create slots like this, and then with these screws we can move it around. With self-tapping or sheet metal screws, you wouldn't be able to really do any adjustments. It would have to be perfectly drilled. So this gives us a little bit more room of adjustment, so it's a little bit nicer. But you could also do sheet metal screws or self-tapping screws, and that'll work. But if you get the holes correctly the first time, if not, I recommend doing this. Alright, so we have both brackets in. They're buttoned down, so this is what it looks like with the socket cap screws right there and right there. Looks really clean. What I'm going to end up doing now is create a template for myself using probably the tape. We're going to get some reference points and then create a template so we can use it on the other side, and then we don't have to guess. We can just drill in a couple of holes and put the brackets in, so it's going to be a lot easier for the other side. Alright, so this is what the door cards look now with everything reassembled, and we got the foaming back on. Right here was just cut a little slit, fit this through so it looks pretty clean. Here it wasn't as easy, so I just cut a little rectangle out and was able to fit it across. Another one was I tucked the airbag wire behind here and attached it with electrical tape so it won't move while we're driving. And that's pretty much it. That's all you really have to do to prep the door cards for the new CSL ones. An easy way to get rid of the plastic holes is to drill them open, so I'm using a drill bit. And you can feel it detach. Once it detaches, you're done, and you just have to do all of them, and this piece will pop right out. So I'm going to continue doing the rest of the welds, and then I'll catch you guys when we're swapping in the carbon fiber. Alright, now that we've done all the spot welds, we can pump the leather piece out. Pull it out, pump that, pop the airbag cover off, and we are done with that junk. Alright, so this is what the door card looks like now once we've removed the leather. And we have to make 2 more modifications to the door card itself before we can put the carbon fiber back on. And what we have to do is we have to cut out a triangle right here to allow for the bracket that goes on the door to pass through, and it mounts to the door handle itself. And then we have to cut out a hole right here as well for the second bracket, which also mounts a door handle to the car's door or the chassis door. So we're gonna do that now with the Dremel. And once we're done with that, we can put the carbon fiber cover on and install it inside the car. Alright, so now I've laid down the template which I got from Karbonius to cut out the holes, and the way they showed it on their instructions is to do it from this side. I would have rather done it from the back side, but I'll just basically mark it out with the Dremel, flip it over, and then cut it, because I think it'll be a lot easier to cut from the back side. I will note that if you're not in Europe, the template will be slightly off because they use A4 sized paper, which is slightly taller, and I think it's about the same width or a little bit more narrow. Whereas in the US we use letter sizing, which is slightly wider and a little bit shorter paper, so that's the only difference. So the templates are off a little bit, but if you cut it a little oversized, it'll be completely fine and the bracket will fit inside. You can always double check with the brackets that you have if they fit inside the holes, and if they do, you're fine. This is kind of just like a rough template of where to cut out the rectangles. Other than that, it's pretty straightforward. Make sure to wear some protective glasses and then just go at it with a Dremel, and it's a pretty easy and quick modification. There we go, and it's as easy as that. We just needed these two cuts right here to allow for the brackets to go through. Here are the brackets, so we'll put this one in. Yep, it fits nicely and there's a lot of space there. And then we'll put this one in as well, and this one fits nicely as well. There's no restrictions. So now what we can do is install these brackets inside the car, which I'll show you guys right now. In the meantime, I'm gonna clean up these cuts, take off these burrs, clean up the spot welds so we can put in the bolts for the carbon fiber covers, and then we can pop this into the car. So we have the carbon fiber panel on, and now we just have to lay down the hardware to secure the carbon fiber onto the door card. So you get little screws from Karbonius, and now all we have to do is screw them in. And that's it for today's video. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. As always, I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.